What if the reason you keep struggling with discipline is because you're trying to solve the wrong problem? You tell yourself, I need more self-control. I need stronger willpower. I just need to stop procrastinating. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the most disciplined person in the room isn't the person fighting temptation the hardest. It's the person who doesn't have to fight it in the first place. Because self-control and discipline are not the same thing, and confusing the two might be making your goals harder than they need to be. Imagine this. You wake up with a goal. Today you're going to study, you're going to exercise, you're going to work on that project you've been postponing. You feel motivated, then your phone lights up. One notification, then another. You tell yourself, I'll just check for a minute. 30 minutes later, you're still scrolling. And now the internal conversation begins. Why can't I control myself? I have no discipline. Maybe I'm just lazy. But notice what happened. You didn't fail because you didn't know what you wanted. You knew exactly what you wanted. The problem was the distance between what you wanted eventually and what felt rewarding right now. That is where self-control enters the picture. Self-control is essentially about regulation. It is the ability to influence your thoughts, emotions, impulses, and behavior in accordance with your goals. In everyday language, self-control is what happens when something inside you says, I want this now. And another part of you says, but I want something else more. You want to watch another episode, but you also want to sleep early. You want to eat the dessert. But you also want to follow your nutritional goal. You want to check social media, but you also want to finish your work. Self-control lives in that moment of conflict. It is the ability to pause and choose. But here's the problem. If your entire life depends on winning that battle repeatedly, you're going to spend a lot of time fighting yourself. And that's where discipline becomes different. Discipline is often portrayed as this heroic ability to force yourself to do difficult things. Wake up at 5 a.m., work when you don't feel like working, say no to everything, never break the routine, never make excuses. But real discipline is more nuanced than that. Think about it this way. Self-control manages the moment. Discipline manages the pattern. Self-control says, don't open the app. Discipline says, why is the app always within reach when I'm trying to focus? Self-control says, get up and exercise. Discipline says, exercise at the same time, in the same place as part of my routine. Self-control says, ignore the temptation. Discipline says, design my environment so the temptation has less power over me. And this distinction changes everything. Because discipline isn't necessarily about becoming better at fighting yourself. It can be about creating fewer situations where you need to fight yourself. And then there's willpower. We often talk about willpower as if it's a simple internal battery. Use it too much, and eventually it runs out. This idea became popular through research on what's known as ego depletion. But here's where we need to be careful. Large replication projects have challenged the idea that self-control simply gets depleted like a tank of fuel. A 2016 pre-registered replication involving 23 laboratories and more than 2,000 participants found only a very small effect that was statistically compatible with zero. And a later 2021 multi-site pre-registered project involving 36 laboratories and more than 3,500 participants also failed to find convincing evidence for the classic depletion effect. So the lesson isn't, you have a tiny amount of willpower. Use it carefully. The better lesson is, don't build your entire life around the assumption that willpower has to save you. Because even if you're capable of resisting something, why make resistance your default strategy? This is where we need to reframe discipline. Imagine two people who want to study every evening. Person A says, "Every night I will fight the urge to watch Netflix." Person B says, "At 7 p.m., my phone goes into another room. My desk is already prepared. I open the same course and begin with the same first task." Who has more discipline? We might instinctively say person A, because person A is fighting harder, but maybe that's the wrong measurement. Person B has created a system in which the desired behavior becomes easier to initiate. This doesn't mean environment is everything, and it doesn't mean self-control is irrelevant. It means something important. Good self-regulation can happen before temptation arrives. You don't always have to resist the impulse. Sometimes you can change the conditions that create the impulse. Psychology has a fascinating concept that fits perfectly here. Implementation intentions. Instead of saying, "I want to exercise more," you create a specific rule. If it is 6 p.m. and I am at home, then I will put on my workout clothes and begin. The difference seems small, but psychologically it's significant. Research by Peter Gallwitzer and Pascal Sheeran examined implementation intentions across 94 independent tests and found a positive effect on goal achievement. Why? Because you aren't making the decision from scratch every time. You're deciding before the difficult moment arrives. And that's one of the most powerful differences between intention and discipline. An intention says, "I should do this." A system says, "When this happens, I already know what I'm going to do." And here's the paradox. The more disciplined your behavior becomes, the less dramatic discipline may look. From the outside, someone might appear incredibly disciplined. They exercise, they study, they work consistently, they read, they protect their time. But perhaps they aren't spending every day in an epic battle against temptation. Perhaps many of those behaviors have become normal. This is why discipline shouldn't be confused with suffering. Doing something difficult doesn't automatically make it more disciplined. Sometimes discipline means repetition. Sometimes it means boundaries. Sometimes it means preparation. Sometimes it means removing distractions. And sometimes it means accepting that you're human and building a system that accounts for that reality. There's another important lesson here. If you constantly tell yourself, "I have no self-control," you turn a behavior problem into an identity. And once the problem becomes part of your identity, failure feels like proof. You procrastinated? See, I'm lazy. You missed a workout? I'm not disciplined. You broke your routine? I always do this. But a better question is, what made the undesired behavior easier than the desired one? Maybe your phone was beside you. Maybe your goal was too vague. Maybe the first step was too difficult. Maybe you had no clear cue for when to begin. Maybe your environment was designed for distraction. That question doesn't remove responsibility. It changes where you look for the solution. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you ask, "What can I redesign?" And that is the reframe. Self-control helps you manage the moment. Willpower helps you make the difficult choice. Discipline helps you build the pattern. And strategy helps you need less resistance in the first place. So the next time you tell yourself, "I need more discipline," stop for a second, ask yourself, do I actually need more willpower? Or do I need a better system? Because maybe discipline isn't about becoming someone who can resist everything. Maybe it's about becoming someone who knows what deserves resistance, what deserves structure, and what should simply be removed from the battlefield. You don't always need to fight yourself harder. Sometimes you need to build a life that makes the right choice easier. Think different, see different. See you in the next video.